Thanks. Good morning to all. We'll ask kindly to Emmanuel to display the presentation. Thank you very much, Emmanuel. So, basically, we asked also Ivy, myself and Ivy drafted the project document of this project in 2018, but she was not able to join us today, so we'll give it alone. This project is a TCP project, Technical Cooperation Project, and it was drafted by myself together with the Office of Southern FAO, responsible office for Southern Africa, based in Harare, on promoting sound pest and pesticide management in Botswana, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. It was a sub-regional project. Next slide. The rationale. Basically, in response, it was a response to request by the government of the Ministry of Agriculture of these three countries that in 2018, Rationale Convention Secretariat developed a project together with that mentioned office I did before, responsible for Southern Africa, to strengthen pesticides management and to develop safer biological alternatives to pesticides for quelea bird control. And then working together with the FAO representative office in Southern Africa, we got hold of $300,000 out of FAO regular program to fund this project on promoting sound pest and pesticide management in these three countries. Next slide, please. What was the problem? Basically, we know that in Southern Africa, there are an estimated 1.5 billion quelea birds with big flocks. We can even reach 30 million birds strong. And we also know that a flock of 5 million birds can easily eat up to 50 metric tons of grain per day. They can eat one quelea bird can eat in one day half of its own weight. Okay, and they can hence devour grain crops worth over $70 million worldwide per year. Right, and chemical control of these birds, as we have seen before in previous presentation, can cause significant harm to the environment, of course, the environmental health, since it kills also non-target species, affects soil, vegetation, pollutes water sources, and even shallow water. Next slide. Hence, recognizing this increased pest pressure, the Secretariat, Rationale Convention Secretariat, wrote this project on strengthening pesticide management capacities and developing environmental friendly biological alternatives to fenthion for quelea bird control, with the aim of providing technical assistance to these three parties in relation to pesticides and their biological alternatives, including HHPs, highly hazardous pesticides, and severely hazardous pesticide formulation, in order to reduce risks for environmental and human health. Next slide, please. The project was made of three components. The first one was the identification and assessment of SHPFs and HHPs. The second one was the promotion of alternatives to these pesticides, hazardous pesticides. And the third one was the introduction of safer biological alternatives to fenthion to solve the quelea birds problem in agriculture in these Southern African countries. Next slide, please. So within the first component, trainings were done in each country on HHP's risk reduction, SHPF's identification. That was the first step. Then Botswana started on finalizing a risk mitigation plan and worked on implementing Rationale Convention obligations. Whereas in Zambia and Zimbabwe, service basically on needs, risk assessment, and even a dietary risk assessment was done. Successful, of course. Next slide, please. Alternatives were identified for crop pest combination, biological alternatives. Then subsequently, cost-benefit analysis for specific alternative pest management methods were executed in each target countries. And finally, biological pesticides were procured and tested on specific crops. Next slide, please. And for the last component, we first started, the implementing office of FAO in each of the three countries started with desk reviews of current quelea management in these three countries. And basically, we know that the quelea problem is usually solved. We see that in the previous presentation with netting, waving flags, making noises, bombing, which is terrible for the environmental health. So basically, it was a desk review. We understood what was the problem, what was the status of addressing quelea problem in these three countries, and then it was prioritized quelea management practices for adoption in each country, sustainable practices for addressing the quelea problem, and then training were executed in the three countries using falcons that we have seen before the presentation of African Falcons Limited. And at the end, then sustainable quelea management practices were piloted successfully. Next slide, please. This project lasted 2 years. It was successful, but it's still not enough. We should do more, and we should attract and appeal donors' interest to fund activities to promote safer alternatives to fenthion for quelea birds problem. And I thank you all.